In today's session, we're going to learn about a new ecosystem, marine ecosystem. This is Biology, Chapter 15, Section 5. Okay, so in the freshwater ecosystems, other than lakes and rivers, we have something called estuaries. Estuaries, today we're going to explain the estuary ecosystem. Let me jump back to the book for 1 minute. Okay, so what is an estuary? Estuary is
Estuary, an area where fresh water from rivers mixes with salt water from the ocean, the part of a river where the tides meet the river current.
exactly. So, estuary is the area where the river ends and the ocean or the sea starts. This area mix the salt water and the river water. So what happened is the fresh water will be mixing with the salt water, creating a new waters and a new ecosystems. And this we can find this estuary, this ecosystem, San Francisco, Chesapeake Bays, are estuaries, Louisiana bayous, Florida Bay in Everglades, and many other harbors. Now, the distinctive feature of the estuary is the mixture of fresh water from rivers and the salt water from oceans. Now, the river carry high levels of nutrients from inland areas, of course, because the river is flowing from the mountains, so it carries a lot of nutrients until it reaches the ocean. The tidal movement of water from the ocean also bring a large volume of organic matter and variety of marine species from inland towards the ocean. So from deep oceans bring a lot of organic matter, and the rivers from high up in the mountains the until the river ends a lot of nutrients. It makes an excellent site, an excellent condition for a new ecosystem to thrive. So it's the estuary. Now the estuaries are highly productive ecosystems on a level comparable to tropical rain forests and coral reefs. This is how successful and productive this ecosystem. Now, photosynthetic organisms thrive in estuaries throughout the year. It's like the tropical rainforests and the coral reefs, providing the basis for aquatic food web. Estuaries also have thriving detritivore. Again, detritivore. Detritivore. Detritivore, guys, is a small decomposers. Now, these decomposers, detritivore, very strong decomposers and very active decomposers. And any ecosystem contain detritivore, this ecosystem will thrive because this ecosystem will be rich in nutrients. So, the detritivore communities that decompose the enormous amount of dead plant and animal matter that build up in the estuary's water. Now, these decomposers return vital nutrients back to the ecosystem. Good. Estuaries also provide necessary habitat for a number of endangered and threatened species. For example, the brown pelican, Morro Bay kangaroo rat, and a plant called Morro manzanita are all threatened or endangered species that depends on the Morro Bay estuary in California. So this is a picture of Morro Bay Estuary in Florida. So, what you need to know is the estuary is not only a successful ecosystem and rich with nutrients, and also it's a habitat for many species. And if the estuaries were to disappear, these species will go extinct. So, the estuaries are very important marine ecosystem. Now, what are the characteristics of estuaries? Now, the large number of phytoplankton and zooplankton in an estuary support a variety of species. Phytoplankton and zooplankton are small microorganisms. If you remember, we already explained these communities in the previous section. Population of fish and crustaceans depends on plankton as their primary food source because phytoplanktons undergo the photosynthesis and they decompose, and the decomposed matter feed the crustaceans. Now, most of the crustaceans that human eats, actually 70% of the fish we eat depends on estuary ecosystem. Very small amount of fishes that the fishing ships bring from deep oceans. Actually, it's most of them estuary ecosystem. Now, so the ecosystem is an important source of commercial fishing industry also for us humans. So by harming the estuary ecosystem, we are harming ourselves. Estuaries provide protected refuge for many species. Reefs and barrier islands along an estuary's boundary with the ocean protect estuary species from storms and the ocean's strong currents and waves. So inside the estuary, you'll find many species find a refuge from the violent ocean weather because the climate, because the oceans many months during the year you'll find the oceans very violent environment, tough environment to live in, strong currents, many storms, climate violently change. So these estuaries provide a refuge for many species. So in an estuary's calm waters, many aquatic species lay eggs, and their young mature. Therefore, the young mature there before venturing into the ocean. The use of estuaries as spawning grounds explain why these areas are often called nurseries to the sea. This is very important. So, let me ask you, explain why the estuaries called nurseries to the sea, because these estuaries can be spawning grounds for many species. Estuaries are also a key part of the migration paths of many bird species, like these birds. What do we call this bird? This is flamingos. These are flamingos. Flamingos, during their migration, they rest in estuaries like this, the Tejo estuary in Portugal. Now, changing conditions in estuaries present challenges for species that live there. For example, in order to withstand changing salinities, what the meaning of salinities? Okay, some organisms have glands that remove the excess salt. So salinities. You can tie this with salt. It's the concentration of salt in the water, because when the fresh waters mixes with the ocean water, the saltiness of the water changes. So the salinities concentration differs. So many different species adapted to this by removing the excess salt that builds up in their bodies. This adaptation helps organisms cope with the estuary's changing salinity level. Salt level may lower with the tide. So the higher the tide, the higher the salt level. The lower the tide, the lower the salt level. Or rainfall. The more rain falls, the lower the salt level will be. The less rainfall, higher the salt will be. Now, threats to estuary ecosystem. As normal, as always, the major threat to these ecosystems are human activities. For shame. I'm very sorry to say that, but it is us. We are the biggest threat to these ecosystems because of land development. We remove the estuaries to develop lands. And when you remove the estuary, you are removing a whole ecosystem and endangering many species. Actually, only in the United States, over 80% of the original estuary habitat has been lost to land development. So we need to be careful. Now, to sum things up and wrap things up. So, freshwater ecosystems include estuaries as well as flowing and standing water. Now, estuaries are dynamic environments where rivers flow into the ocean. Mixture of fresh water with salt water, like Chesapeake Bay, Louisiana bayous. These are the estuaries. Now, the estuary is partially enclosed body of water, like the picture you are seeing right now. Estuaries are highly productive ecosystems. Estuaries provide a protected refuge for many species, like bird migration, spawning grounds. Estuaries are primarily threatened by land development. This is the Tejo estuary in Portugal, hosting flamingos during their migration. So we'll stop today, continue next lesson. I hope you understood and had fun. Thank you.